Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi took office in October 2025, making history as the country's first female leader. A conservative from the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, she inherited a legacy shaped by the strong influence of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, a figure known for his hardline stance on security and foreign policy. Takaichi's leadership began under the shadow of considerable political instability within Japan as her party navigated a fragile coalition after losing its longtime partner, the Komeito Party. However, she managed to secure a new alliance with the Japan Innovation Party, allowing her to assume the position with a mandate to push for a more assertive Japan on the global stage. In the days following her inauguration, Takaichi met with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea, where the two leaders agreed on the importance of fostering long-term stability in their bilateral relationship. Takaichi's comments emphasized cooperation, describing Japan and China as vital partners in the region. The meeting seemed to signal a commitment to strengthening diplomatic ties between the two largest economies in Asia. But only a few days later, the diplomatic atmosphere would take a dramatic turn. In her first major address to the Japanese parliament, Takaichi made a statement that would send shockwaves through the region and trigger one of the most severe diplomatic clashes in years between Japan and China. In her speech, Takaichi threatened military intervention should China attempt to invade Taiwan, marking a clear departure from Japan's traditionally cautious stance on Taiwan. She warned that any military aggression in the Taiwan Strait could pose a survival-threatening situation for Japan, thus justifying Japan's right to self-defense. The comments were unprecedented, given Japan's post-World War II pacifist constitution, which has long prohibited the country from engaging in military conflicts unless directly attacked. However, Takaichi's remarks were not entirely surprising for those familiar with her hawkish views on Japan's security role in the region. She had long advocated for Japan to take a more active role in global security, particularly regarding Taiwan, a self-governed island that China views as a breakaway province. Takaichi's statements were a clear indication that she intended to follow through with this more assertive approach. China's response to Takaichi's comments was swift and furious. The Chinese government issued a formal statement condemning her remarks, calling them egregious and demanding an immediate retraction. Tensions escalated further when a Chinese diplomat, in a now-deleted social media post, appeared to issue a direct threat to Takaichi, saying that China had no choice but to cut off that dirty neck that has lunged at us without a moment's hesitation. The inflammatory language underscored the seriousness of the situation and highlighted the heightened emotions surrounding the Taiwan issue. The rhetoric was matched by a series of retaliatory actions. In response to Takaichi's comments, China issued a travel advisory for its citizens, warning them to avoid visiting Japan in the near future. Chinese airlines, including China Southern and Air China, offered refunds for flights to Japan, and Chinese students were advised against studying in the country. The travel advisory sent shockwaves through Japan's tourism industry, which relies heavily on Chinese visitors, and sparked concerns about the broader economic implications of the growing tensions as the diplomatic spat continued to unfold. The two countries' military forces also began to display their readiness. Chinese naval vessels were spotted sailing near the disputed Senkaku Islands, which are controlled by Japan but claimed by China. The Japanese government condemned the move, calling it unacceptable and reinforcing its position that the islands are an integral part of Japanese territory. This ongoing maritime dispute has long been a flashpoint in Japan-China relations, and it appeared that Takaichi's comments on Taiwan had reignited tensions over the islands. Despite the intensity of the rhetoric and the diplomatic fallout, most analysts believe that the likelihood of an actual military confrontation remains low. While both Japan and China have hardened their positions, the risk of open warfare is constrained by several factors. First, any military conflict would come with enormous costs, both economically and strategically for both countries. Second, the logistical challenges of fighting a war over Taiwan are significant, especially for Japan, which would have to rely heavily on its US allies for support. In addition, China's leadership, while firm in its rhetoric, is thought to be working to a longer timetable, with some analysts predicting that Beijing will not take decisive action against Taiwan until 2049 or 2050, the centenary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. For now, China's approach seems focused on applying pressure and sending strong messages rather than rushing into military action. While military confrontation may seem unlikely, the escalating tensions between Japan and China are already having significant diplomatic and economic repercussions. The relationship between the two nations, which had seemed to be progressing toward greater cooperation, now appears to be at a crossroads. Japan's decision to align more closely with the United States and other Western allies in the Indo-Pacific region has made it increasingly difficult for Japan to balance its security interests with its economic ties to China. In recent years, Japan has grown more wary of China's growing military power and its assertive foreign policy, particularly in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. At the same time, Takaichi's comments signal a broader shift in Japan's security posture. The new Prime Minister is increasingly willing to take a stronger stance on issues like Taiwan and the broader security challenges posed by China. Takaichi's leadership reflects the growing influence of conservative forces within Japan's political establishment, who argue that Japan must do more to assert its security interests in the face of an increasingly aggressive China. Her comments on Taiwan and military intervention are part of a larger strategy to push for a more active and visible Japanese role in regional security. This shift in Japan's foreign policy has significant implications for the broader region. While military intervention remains unlikely, Japan's increasing assertiveness may provoke further tension with China, especially in areas like the South China Sea, where both countries have competing territorial claims. Japan's growing defense capabilities, including the expansion of its military alliances with the United States and other regional powers, will likely be seen by China as a direct challenge to its influence in the region. In turn, China's aggressive rhetoric and military posturing are likely to put pressure on Japan to reconsider its strategy and reconsider its security alliances. As for Taiwan, the island continues to be a flashpoint in US-China relations. While Taiwan is not a formal US ally, the United States has a long-standing commitment to supporting Taiwan in the event of an attack by China. Japan, as a key US ally in the region, is increasingly drawn into this strategic competition. Japan's geographical proximity to Taiwan, coupled with its reliance on US military bases, makes it an essential player in the event of a crisis in the Taiwan Strait. However, Takaichi's remarks have complicated the situation, raising the spectre of Japan's direct involvement in a potential conflict, which would have far-reaching consequences for the region's security and stability. At present, Japan's new Prime Minister faces a delicate balancing act. While her hardline stance on Taiwan and China may appeal to conservative elements within her own party, it risks alienating key trading partners and complicating Japan's relationships with other countries in the region. For Japan, the path forward will require careful diplomacy, especially as tensions with China continue to simmer. The stakes are high, and the coming months will likely be crucial in determining how this complex geopolitical situation evolves. The broader implications for global stability are also significant. As China and Japan's rivalry intensifies, other countries in the Indo-Pacific region, including South Korea, the Philippines, and Vietnam, will be watching closely. Each of these nations has its own territorial disputes with China and will be closely monitoring Japan's response to the rising threat. Japan's actions will likely influence the policies of its regional neighbors, who will have to navigate the growing pressure from both China and the United States as they seek to safeguard their own security interests. In conclusion, Japan's relationship with China is at a critical juncture. While the diplomatic row sparked by Takaichi's comments may subside in the short term, the broader geopolitical shifts it signals are unlikely to be easily resolved. The Taiwan issue will continue to serve as a key flashpoint in the US-China-Japan triangle, with each country seeking to assert its interests and influence in the region. Whether this situation will lead to open conflict or a new phase of diplomatic and economic rivalry remains to be seen. But for now, the tensions between Japan and China are set to continue shaping the future of the Indo-Pacific.